Okay, so no one's here yet again, but we'll see if somebody comes a little bit late. But I'd like to start on time so we can finish on time. And I'll go along as much as I can. I'm going to go ahead and hide the captions. If you really want the captions on, you can actually turn them on through YouTube. But if any of you really want me to just have them embedded, let me know, and I'll just make sure every time we meet that I record the closed captions with it. So hopefully all will work well. Now, obviously, the captions are AI, so they're going to misspell things and they're going to misunderstand what I said, but I will try to speak as clearly as possible. Anyway, we were talking about Oedipus the King, or Oedipus Rex. That's just what Rex means. And we were almost to the point of a messenger coming, but I wanted to kind of start where we left off, but go backtrack just a tad, because essentially what Oedipus does, and this is about 2/3 of the way through the play, is he lays out his own experience when he was a young person. So remember, the whole mystery is that where they're trying to figure out who killed Laius and how it happened, and who's the culprit and why did he not get caught, and in the meantime he's asking seers and all sorts of other people about it. And one of the seers says, you're the one who killed him, and you also married your mom and had babies, and that's just disgusting. And he of course is furious that anybody would claim something like that. But the truth is he's had problems with anger before, because when he was young, and this is what he's telling, he was son of Merope and Polybus of Corinth, and king and queen, and they were his parents, and so he lived okay. He was going to be the next in line for the throne and blah blah blah. But somebody at a banquet said, you're not even your parents' child. And he goes, what? And he goes, I didn't worry about it, but then I asked mom and dad, and they just, oh, I can't believe it, and they denied it. And it rankled him, so he went to see our oracle at Delphi. And Apollo essentially didn't tell him the answer. He asked, who, are Polybus and Merope my parents? And Apollo didn't answer. He said, you're going to kill your dad and marry your mom. And so he freaked out. He ran away. So essentially he said, I'm not going to go, because I'm not going to do this. And so he's fleeing Corinth. He's never going to go back. And he runs into triple branching roads, this crossroads. And there's a man there who is rude and mean and actually sends his servants to kill Oedipus. And so I mean, literally, from his car, he brought down full on my head the double-pointed goad. And that's it. Yet I was quits with him and more. One stroke of my good staff flung him clean out of the chariot seat and laid him prone. And he slew all of the servants but one. And so he says, but if this stranger that I killed and Laius have something in common, who more miserable than I? What mortal could find more God abhorred? In other words, if I'm the killer, this is extremely bad. And this same curse was laid on me. The curse I laid on the person who killed Laius would be laid on me. Plus, with hands all gory, I pollute the bed of him I slew. In other words, I slept with a woman who of the wife of the man I killed. And this is awful. And I hope, but he's pretty honest about it. I hope that this is not true, but he wants to see from the stranger who comes, the person who was the witness, the servant. He wants to find out what his story is, because his story forever has been that there were a bunch of robbers. And he says, my hope is faint, but it's still there. This is essentially what he hopes. He goes, he said Laius was slain by robbers. If he still speaks of robbers, not a robber, then it wasn't me. But if he says it was just one person, then it may be the truth, and it may be me. And Jocasta says, no. He said that there were robbers. He's not going to retract it now. He can't make the death of Laius into something that the oracle predicted. That's stupid. So Jocasta doesn't believe it. And then that they have the chorus talk. Remember, I told you to kind of ignore what the chorus was saying. And Jocasta comes out, and she's like, she comes out to essentially meet a messenger. And the messenger is not the guy that she sent for yet. He hasn't arrived yet, but it's a messenger from Corinth. And she says, but why are you coming from Corinth? And he says, I'm coming to thy husband king. And the husband, who's king of Thebes, is going to become king of Corinth. And he goes, but Polybus is still king. And he goes, nope, he's dead and in his grave. What? Is he dead? The sire of Oedipus? So in other words, she says, oh, his dad died and he didn't do it. So she thinks, okay, we'll see, we're all good then. And all this time, he fled from his father, and his father died of natural causes. So Oedipus did not murder him. And he says, why have you summoned me? She gives Oedipus the good news. And she says, he comes from Corinth, and his message is this: thy father Polybus has passed away. And he says, yep, that's actually true. He says, was it by treachery or sickness? He goes, he was an old dude. So he died of natural causes. And then he's like, what? That's so stupid. They told that essentially he's saying, oh, see, it was bunk that the oracle told me that I was going to slay my father, but he's dead and in his grave. And here I am who never unsheathed the sword. And she goes, so I told you. And he goes, but I was afraid and stuff like that. And he says, she says, well, then you don't have anything to fear. And he goes, well, don't I have to fear my mother's marriage bed? And she goes, what's the likelihood of you going and wedding your mom? And he goes, no. He says, I should have shared in full thy confidence. Were not my mother living, since she lives, though half convinced, I still must live in dread. In other words, okay, yeah, I didn't kill my dad, but I could still marry my mom, so I'm not going anywhere near Corinth. And he's still afraid. That again, he's even though the first part of the oracle didn't come true, he thinks, okay, well, I'm not going to let the second one go through either. And so the messenger's like, what are you afraid of? And Oedipus says, well, I don't want to sleep with my mom. I don't want to mate with my own mother. That's just disgusting. And he goes, this is what kept you from exiled from home. This is the messenger from Corinth. And he goes, yes. And I didn't want to kill my own dad. And he goes, well, I came to give you pleasure. Have I not rid thee of the second fear? And he says, no. He goes, well, I confess that, he says, I'm never going to go home. And the messenger says, well, that's why I got you. And he goes, well, if this is why you dread to return. And he goes, yes, because the oracle said I'd kill my mom and dad. And he goes, so through thy parents, you would be accursed. He goes, yeah. He goes, but that's baseless. And he goes, well, why? He goes, because Polybus and Merope aren't your parents. And Oedipus goes, what? And he goes, isn't he my sire? And he goes, as much as thy sire as I am. And in other words, no, I'm not your dad, and neither was he. And you had been bestowed upon him. He'd adopted you. And you weren't his real son. He's like, what? And he even says, he goes, but he's essentially a shepherd saved you. And he says, and he says, from what harm? He goes, those ankle joints are evidence enough, because his ankles are still swollen. He says, I loosed the pin that riveted thy feet. And he goes, I've had that scar since I was a baby. And he says, right, that's why you're called Oedipus, or swollen foot. That's what Oedipus means. And he says, well, then who was my mom and dad? And he goes, I don't know. The man from whom I had thee may know more, because he's the one who was given the baby and gave it to the king and queen of Corinth. It's amazing how suddenly all the people who once knew him suddenly come out, but that's part of this play. And he said, "Would you know the man if you saw him?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, but he was somebody from Laius's house." And he goes, "The king from here?" He goes, "Oh yeah, he was a herdsman of the king." And Oedipus is really scared at this point. And he says, "Does anybody know who this person is?" And the chorus says, "Well, I think it was the person Jocasta sent for." So the same servant who almost died when Laius was killed was the same guy who went out and took the baby Oedipus, and instead of leaving in the forest to die, he gave him away to a herdsman. And she goes, and Jocasta has been listening this whole time, and she's put two and two together. This is important. And she says, "Let it be." She goes, "This is dumb. Let's not listen to any of this." And then she says, he goes, "No, I have to figure out exactly what happened and who I was born to." And she says, "Oh, as thou carest for thy life, give o'er this quest. Enough the anguish I endure." And he goes, "Don't worry." He goes, "It's okay if I'm a slave. That's okay. I'm still king." And she goes, "It's not because of that." She knows, she's trying to convince him not to keep investigating because she knows what he's going to find, because she knows now for sure that she's his mom, and she is devastated. So she says, "Oh, woe is thee, poor wretch. With that last word, I leave thee henceforth silent evermore." So what's she going to do? Well, the Greeks are really good, remember, about not showing all the blood and everything. She's going inside, and she goes into the pavilion on the staging area, goes in through the door and disappears, and hangs herself. She is devastated that she has slept with her own child and then had more children by him. So the incest thing definitely works against her. She is horrified. Now, she didn't do it intentionally. None of this was it. The only thing that was intentional is that she and Laius bound a baby by his ankles and left him for dead in the woods. That's the only thing. It's the whole crime. And yet, it spawns all these other bad things. And all of them were intentional, unintentional, but they all came out of this issue. So Jocasta leaves. Oedipus is just, he says, "I have to figure out this stuff." He goes, it's just because she's embarrassed that I might not be a king. Like, come on. Like, I'm not going to be ashamed of who I am. So why should I fear this? And he even says, "Why should I fear to trace my birth?" He's very insistent about it. And yet he should fear. The whole audience knows this. He should be very afraid. And even if they didn't know it before, by this point, they all know. Like, he's the last one to figure it out. Okay, so the chorus talks, they sing some, do some chanting and stuff like that. And here comes the herdsman. He says, the Oedipus even says, "I seem to recognize the men who bring him in as servants of my own. Have you ever seen this guy before?" And the chorus says, "Yep." And the messenger from Corinth, he asks, he says, "Is that the guy you got the baby from?" He goes, "Yep." And now he says, "Okay, so herdsman, I got to ask you some questions. Were you once in of Laius's house?" And he goes, "No." I mean, yes, I was a thrall, a slave. "What were your business?" "I tended sheep." And he tells him kind of where he tended to go. He says, "Have you ever seen that man over there?" He goes, "That, in what way? What do you mean?" "The man here, right there." He goes, "I cannot call him well to mind." Oh my gosh, it's missing a piece. Okay, let's go ahead and find what happened. Oh my gosh, I can't believe this. We're going to find it because this is ridiculous. Just absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. I got to find the one that actually has. See, this is the Project Gutenberg file. Oh, no, it isn't. Okay. So I will have to put this in here because you guys don't know what happened. Think. Yeah, okay. So we're gonna have to scroll, y'all. I can't believe this happened. This is awful. I need to change the link so you guys can see the end of it. Because this is ridiculous. I changed it once because things were it was hard to read, but it was also because it didn't have the ending. And so why would people not put the ending on this thing? Okay. So Jocasta's already left. Da, 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 da. So we have to go way, way, way down. I've got to move this over so I can see where we are. Because we should be almost to the end. Doodly doodly doo. Okay. Okay. Now I've gone too far. Okay, so the messenger essentially he says he goes, well, he goes, I don't even know that guy. So and he goes, really? And he goes, he says, what are you talking about? I don't remember anything. And he goes, come on, you know something. He goes, wasn't that the person that you gave the child to? And he points to, and the stranger points to Oedipus and he goes, that's the baby. And the shepherd goes, no, 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 no. And he wants the stranger not to talk, not to tell Oedipus what's going on. I've got to change this. This is awful. And he goes, what's wrong? And he goes, whence came the babe from this? And the shepherd doesn't want to answer. And he says, he goes, thou wilt not speak for love, but pain, maybe. So in other words, you're not going to do it because you love me, but maybe if I threaten to hurt you. And he goes, you would not torture me, but they essentially are going to torture him if he doesn't admit what's going on. He said, did you give this man the child? He goes, I did. And so he has to admit it. And he says, was it your own child? And he goes, nope. And don't ask me whose it was. And he goes, you're gonna tell me. He goes, it was Laius's child. It was Laius's right here. No, then they said 'twas Laius's child, but she within thy wife best knows its fathering. 'Twas she that gave it. He goes, it was she. And bade you what? Destroy it? Her own child? But remember what the prophecy was. He will kill his dad, marry his mom. They were trying to avoid it. Of course, by if they had raised him from the time he was a child, this would not have happened. And so this is a problem. Because now he left, of course, thought he was in somebody else's parent, somebody else, two other people were his parents, and now he's married his mom and killed his dad. He's fulfilled the prophecy. He's done exactly what they feared. And Jocasta knows it. Well, Oedipus is furious. He goes, oh, on these eyes shed light no more. The everlasting skies that know my sin. I have sinned in birth and breath. I have sinned with woman. I have sinned with death. And he rushes into the palace. And the chorus is like, what's he going to do? This is awful, blah, 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 blah. And then the messenger comes out of the palace and says, oh my gosh, the horrors that have happened inside. Because remember, Greeks don't show it. And so the leader says, well, what is it? What happened? And he goes, already this was heavy. And he goes, first, Jocasta's dead. Why? She hanged herself. And in fact, the only way we know is because Oedipus ran in and he went to kill her. Literally. Suddenly it says, but they found, I know not how her death found her, for sudden with a roar of wrath burst Oedipus upon us. Then you see, I mean, essentially he's like a sword. He's going to go kill his wife. So Oedipus was going to add to the sin by not only killing his dad and marrying his mom and having children, but then killing his mom, even though it wasn't her fault any more than it was his fault, really. And she certainly didn't intend to commit incest. So He's like, that wife, no wife. So he's furious. And in that fury, he would have killed her had she not hanged herself. He would have probably stabbed her. And then he bursts into her chamber, and there she is hanging dead. And he takes the pin out of her, essentially off her clothing, and pokes his eyes out. And down on the shuddering orbs of his sight dashed it, out, out, you never more shall see me, nor the anguish, nor the sins of me. So he has made himself blind. Now that he can see, now that he sees the truth. Remember, Tiresias could see the truth even though he was blind. Now that Oedipus can see the truth, he doesn't want to live, let alone see. But he certainly never wants to look upon any of it again. And is he over his anger, is what the leader asks. And he goes, yeah. And he shouts for one to open wide the gate and lead him forth. In other words, he is going to put himself on display as the murderer of Laius and banish himself. So he doesn't kill himself the way that Jocasta does, but he banishes himself. So he will be exiled forever. He will never be able to come back to Thebes. He's no longer the king of Thebes. They have no king. They have no queen because she's dead too. And here comes Oedipus out. Now remember, they're wearing masks. And so he has, literally the actor likely had another mask with the blood coming from his eyes, so it looks like he's blinded and bleeding. Some versions may have put like a wrapping around his eyes so that it's not horribly gory. I've seen it where they left it and it just looks, I mean, they've done a really major makeup job, but I've seen most of the productions I've seen, if they use just people and not masks, he's just blindfolded. So you see maybe blood on his face, but you don't see like the holes for eye sockets. The chorus is all sad. Everybody's sad. I mean, it's just like the end. And essentially what Oedipus comes to this, he says, look, I have to leave. So, and he says, you guys have been sweet and all, but I gotta go. And he blames Apollo. He blames all of the different prognostications, what was going to happen. They put people into action, and those actions made it happen. In other words, if he hadn't gone to the oracle, that never would have been. And so now he doesn't want to see. He doesn't want to know the truth. He just wants to never see it again because he has no joy left. His 4 children whom he did love, in fact, he actually meets 2 of them. Where are they? And then I know he meets his 2 kids. Where are they? And Creon is the one who comes in. He says, don't worry. And Creon said, like, I'm not going to make fun of you. Because Oedipus, remember, was really mean to Creon. He goes, don't worry. He says, I'm just brokenhearted that this happened. And I pity that this all happened the way it did and that this is what we found. This is not what I ever hoped for. And Oedipus accepts that. In God's name, since thou hast undone the fear within me, coming thus, all nobleness, to one so vile, grant me only grace. And he goes, what do you want? He says, cast me out. And he says, but I don't want to do that. And he goes, Apollo said that the person had to be exiled or dead. And so Oedipus, even though he has faced all of these things and it's just awful, he says he is going to be the honorable person at this point and do exactly what he promised. He is going to exile the person. And then he does say, but my children, my sons will ask thee for no care. Men are they. So the 2 boys are older, but my 2 poor desolate maidens. And that's Ismene and Antigone. I'll type those in too. They're younger. In fact, the 2 princesses, a lot of times they're depicted as very young. by the time we get to the third play in this trilogy, which we're not reading, that's called Antigone, it's named after the daughter, one of the two. Both daughters are in it. By the time it happens, both sons are dead because they turn on each other. Both want the throne and they fight over it. And Creon takes sides. And then when they both kill each other in the battlefield, he only allows one of them to be buried. And so Creon makes a big mistake next. Because essentially for the Greeks, tragedy happens because a noble person makes a huge mistake. But in essence, the person is overall a noble person. They're not an evil person. They make mistakes. We all make mistakes. Most of us are not evil. And so these are not villains who get what they deserve. This is not a revenge play. This is people who were trying to do the right thing and backed in and did the wrong thing, or misjudged what they were doing and were blind to the harm they caused until it was too late, if that makes sense. That's really what tragedy is. And again, what was their biggest mistake? That they tried to escape their fate. And if they had not tried to escape their fate, they would have escaped their fate. And in essence, by telling them their fate, the oracle pushed them into it. So had they not sought their fate, if anything, this is a lesson. Don't go and ask the oracle anything, because she might tell you, and then goodness knows what's going on. And so he leaves. Now, the next play is actually Oedipus at Colonus. And I will put this new link into the thing. I cannot believe that this is the link, that the other link was in there, because it's terrible. It doesn't have the end. I will put that in so that you guys can read the end of that. But at least I've gone over it in here too. But I'll replace the other link with this one. Let's talk. But it's essentially the next play is Oedipus at Colonus. And that's where he's wandering. And the end of the play is when his daughter, Antigone, actually guides him to the entrance to Hades. And he climbs down into the stage, down into the underworld. And that's because he's dying. And so the second play ends with his death, but then it still carries on because the consequences of what happened actually exist at this point. And so Antigone, the two brothers war with each other and kill each other on the battlefield. Antigone buries the boy, the brother who was not allowed to be buried, and Creon gives her a sentence of death. And so she is trying to stand up for what is right. She doesn't want either brother to suffer, for his soul to wander as a ghost or something like that. And they really believe that if you didn't properly bury them, the souls would wander. And she didn't want that to happen. So she buried them against the edict, and essentially Creon orders her death. What he doesn't understand too, not only was that really that she was the merciful person, she was trying to do the right thing, he also condemns his own son because his son is in love with her. And so when they bury her alive, they're putting her essentially in a tomb, and where she'll just starve to death. He sneaks in with her. And so when Creon finds out what happened, he realizes that both she and his own son died. And so that's his tragedy at the end. So it's really more of a tragedy for Creon than it is a tragedy for Antigone, because she doesn't really change her mind or have any real realization. But it's an interesting trilogy. My least favorite is the Oedipus at Colonus. It's really not that interesting. And it's rarely anthologized. People rarely read that one. I have read it just to fulfill the trilogy. If you're interested in other types of trilogies like this, there are quite a few that are really interesting. So, especially if you like Greek mythology. Anyway, let's go ahead and switch to the next thing, though. We'll go to the Tao Te Ching. And Taoism, this is really kind of a set of poems and explanations that add up to what the Tao is, or Taoism is. Now, Taoism, what Tao means is, it's just, its actual direct translation is the way. And it's not like the one path or something. That's not what we're talking about. And Taoism is very elemental and very adaptable. That's the whole point of Taoism. Like one of the major tenets of Taoism is that everything is in constant change. And to expect things to stay the same is to be disappointed. Okay. Just like the river is always changing, the winds are always changing, the weather is always changing, mountains are wearing down, houses fall to pieces, people get old, people die, people are born. Change. We have to accept it. Okay. And being accepting of it and being at peace with it is part of the way. Now, what that means is essentially the way is that path that for you, and it's changeable, but the path that for you is the smoothest one. It's not really the path of least resistance, but it's like if you swim with the stream, with the current, you're going to swim much more quickly and easily. It's going to be a more pleasant swimming experience. If you swim away from it, if you try to swim upstream, you're not going to get very far. It's going to be very strenuous. You're going to be extremely frustrated and unhappy, and it's not going to work, is essentially the point of it. So this is not really a religion. It's much more of a philosophical way of looking at the world, but it's absolutely dealing with this idea that you are to, figure out and constantly be open to the way. So instead of insisting that the way you want to go is the right way and you're going to do it no matter what things fall in your, essentially prevent you from being successful. That's like somebody getting on American Idol and their voice is terrible and they can't hold a tune, and they don't play any musical instruments. They don't really listen much to music, but they really want to be a star. And so they join, American Idol, and everybody says, you're terrible. And they go, no, I'm frustrated. And so they go and find somebody to help them learn how to sing better. But their singing is still really crappy, and they just don't have any talent. And so they will find blocks in their way all the rest of their life if they don't recognize that they're trying to do something that's frustrating and because it's not meant for them, and turn to something else. It certainly speaks against the whole type A person. The idea that all you have to do is work harder and you'll get wherever you, they're like, nah. And it's not like they're saying be lazy, but don't insist that your way is right. Instead of being ego-centered, where I'm the one who's right and I'm the one who makes all the decisions and I'm the one, free will and independence and all this. Instead, pay attention to the universe and fit into it. Find the path where you can harmoniously live with yourself and with the universe. And this is where we get the yin-yang symbol. You know what the yin-yang is. Hopefully you do. If you don't, you can just look it up and you'll see it immediately. And you go, oh, that's what that is. That's actually the symbol of Taoism. It's probably its most prominent symbol. And a lot of people see it as like good versus evil or something like that. The black side is evil with a white dot and the good side is white with black dot. But no, that's not it at all. It's actually a complete misunderstanding. It's more like the male and female, or play and work. It's about balance. So the black side with the white dot isn't evil. It's different. If anything, it's opposite. But you think about it, when you go on vacation, if you were always on vacation, drinking all the time, eating lots of food, laying around on the pool at the poolside, getting a tan or a burn or whatever, and you did it all your life, well, you'd amount to almost nothing, and it would get really boring. At least for me, it would. But if you only work and you never take a vacation, that's not going to be good for you either. You're going to end up with, stress, headaches, and then maybe a stroke and other stress related things, maybe a heart condition, maybe you don't exercise at all. And, but finding a balance. You can overdo anything, but this is about, eating for balance, about activity for balance, about doing play and work, about, essentially creating a sense of calm so that you are not out of balance. We have a thing, we're when things are not going well, we feel what is called disequilibrium. I think that's the way it's spelled. But I forgot a equal an A in there. But disequilibrium just means you're out of balance. And so for Taoists, their whole goal is to become in balance, not just with yourself, but with the universe. So you're at peace with all your neighbors, you're at peace with your family members, you're at peace at work, you get along with people and you're authentic to who you are, but you're also letting them be authentic to who they are and getting along smoothly. But the ride gets rough when you start telling people how they're supposed to be. You boss them around. You don't have the right to do that either. Or they try to do that to you. You know, the whole thing is, don't, you know, pound a square peg into a round hole. It's recognize where the hole is rounded and find the round side of the peg so things slip in nicely. It's about adapting to the environment and the world and the point in your life that you're at and all of the different variables, and recognizing them for what they are. So getting along with everything instead of overpowering everything, because that's not going to work. So it's not typical, you know, we think about, you know, American work ethic and American dream and, you know, the ambition, and that doesn't speak to the Tao at all. It's like the opposite of what Taoism tries to urge people to do. Okay, so we're going to talk about some elements of that as we go through these chapters. So it is not constant. So there's no such thing as constant. And it's funny because they say nameless is the origin of heaven and earth, and you know, even in Christianity, although we have this, you know, the name, you know, Yahweh from the Judeo-Christian tradition, or Jehovah in the English version, or Allah in the Arabic version, for the most part, Jews never really call the God by name. He is I am that I am. You don't call him by, you might say my Lord or God or something, but you don't say his name. And in some ways, that's what you know, Taoism doesn't ascribe to a particular like religion or set of gods, but it is like, this is the universe. And these are, you know, we have messages that come from the universe. Who is sending these messages is a mystery, but the messages are all there, and our job is to read those messages, not to try to figure out who the God is. That's not what the point of it is, but to figure out, we want to observe what's really going on, the truth of what's going on. And so if anything, the Tao is a profound mystery, but it's one that is always going to be changing. It's always going to be adapting, and you're adapting to it. And so this is not a, let's figure out your path and you just stay on the same dang path and never change anything. It's that you adapt and flow almost like a river. When you get to a bend, you turn. When you get to a stopping spot, you pool there for a bit and the water rises. When it breaks, the wall or the bank breaks down, then you can flow again. But you're just kind of, you're receptive to the different stimuli in your environment that are telling you what to do. And you're listening instead of talking. I hope it makes sense. If it does not, please write me, because I really, really, really want it to be, I really want it to be clear to you. Now this is all poetry, so a lot of it is a lot more cryptic than it might be. Plus this is translated. So once it was in Chinese and now it is in English, and that is this is a pretty good translation, but it is still kind of hard to understand. Now, part of this is also about your individual interpretation versus society's interpretation. And essentially what chapter 2 talks about is what happens when the public acknowledges something or claims something. So as soon as beauty is known by the world as beautiful, it becomes ugly. As soon as virtue is being known as something good, it becomes evil. In other words, just naming it can actually change it. So if you purport one thing as the best or the only choice or whatever it is, and you stop, you fix it in time, in space, without changing, it will become corrupted. So maybe you make a choice, you know, like my husband's favorite motto is never give up, which is very not Taoist. But if you never give up, think about all the things you've tried. I tried skiing, and I am so grateful every day, every winter. I'm so absolutely grateful that I gave it up. I did it for 2 days. No, I did it for 1 day. And that was the longest day of my life. And I will never do it again. And I don't find, I love snow, but I do not love skiing, and I will never love it. And it's not good for me anyway. I have bad knees. So I have to listen and not just insist that I will never give up on anything. There are times when I really want, there were things in the past that I would love to do. I wanted to be, I thought about being an actress. I thought about singing. We've all had these ambitions. I really wanted to be a firefighter for the longest time, but that didn't happen. And so am I going to pine for the rest of my life because that was my plan and I gave up? No, we find what suits us better and we adapt to that. So we're always looking for the way that makes us happy, and it's gonna change over time automatically. So as soon as we establish something, then it becomes something else, and we insist that that's the permanent. There is no permanent. So it's like living. We can be alive now. Could that change at any moment? Yes. Does it? Yes. So what are we all going to eventually get? Death. And that's supposed to happen. That's a change that is supposed to happen. So difficult and easy accomplish each other. And without difficult, we don't know easy. And without easy, we don't know difficult. Long and short form each other. So again, we have that idea of the yin yang. Without one side, we don't have the other. And so we need, you could certainly take this politically and go, we need both conservatives and liberals because they balance each other out. If either side took over, this would not be a good thing. And so because we need balance. So sound and tone harmonize each other. Before and after follow each other as a sequence. Everything's connected. And so why not allow all those things to connect and be a part of life? They're all a part of life. Good, bad, beautiful, ugly. And the truth is, what's beautiful? What's ugly? I mean, there are a few things that I could definitely say are ugly, but there's something like even animals, sometimes they're fugly, they're like cute and furry, but they're also kind of ugly, but they're so ugly, they're cute, it's that kind of thing. So the truth is everybody has elements of them that balance out their elements out. Is there any perfect? No. Perfection is not something you can necessarily look for. And that's not what Taoism is about. Even Buddhism isn't about, finding that perfection. What they're doing is you're trying to connect as indelibly to the world as possible, where you don't matter anymore. That's Buddhism. So, or at least it's my extremely tight overview of Buddhism. But it's essentially a loss of self, where it's not about what you can get and what about yourself. And there's no envy or pride or lies, or because you're not trying to one up anybody else. You're just, it kind of does fit in, but all of your efforts are to help the universe, to help the world be better, to help other people, to see truth, not to feed your own ego. And so if anything, this is the whole point of, that's when a lot of Buddhists are also Taoists. Those two kind of align. Actually, I've known Christian Taoists though. So I don't know, because Taoism is not, like I said, it's not a religion. So essentially the saint, that's that idea of the way, the person who's following the path, inspires the vitality of all lives, not just certain ones. He doesn't necessarily pick sides. He nurtures all beings with no wish to take possession of them. He devotes all his energy, but has no intention to hold on to merit. So it's not about him. It's about all the good things he's doing. And this is where Buddhism and Taoism fit very closely together. He seeks no recognition. How many people have you known who want to do something, but they want to be recognized for it? They want, it's not just that they don't just want to sing or play the piano or something. They want to be in front of an audience of thousands and thousands and thousands of people and have them cheering. And it's not about the act, it's about the recognition. And so that needs to go away. And he says because he does not claim credit, he won't lose it. And we've certainly, I don't know if you ever remember anybody doing that where they claimed, oh, this is me. And then you find out, no, it's not. It's like the worst embarrassment when they say, oh, I did this and they didn't do it, and because they're puffing themselves up unnaturally. It doesn't fit who they are. Better to be honest. And honestly, too, better to do things and not seek to be recognized for them. Don't spout your own virtues to other people. And so, and part of it too is also not being caught up in what society says. Don't think that person's amazing just because they're a pop star or a really famous actor or super rich. That's all stupid. If we don't adore the other people, they will not fall into dispute. The problem is we give people too much credit and too much merit, and it corrupts them. Plus, when we figure out they're not as great as we idolize them to be, then that's bad. That's a hard fall. If we don't value objects like, especially the expensive stuff, gold, fancy cars, diamonds, stuff like that, we won't rob for it. Because that's really hard to get, but is it really valuable? What matters? Food, shelter, being safe, not being super wealthy and have tons of luxury. By not seeing the desires of lust, one's heart will not be confused. So that's not Taoism. Going and go, ooh, I'm lusting after this girl, and then I'm lusting after this girl, and then I'm lusting after this girl. Hopping partners isn't Taoism. The fact that you're seeking to satisfy your own lust is the opposite of Taoism. You should seek to give love, not necessarily passionate love, but love to other people. Be generous, be giving, be caring, be kind, be compassionate. Use your activity, use your actions for good. But don't take credit for it, because that's your job. It's not something for you. Again, don't point the arrow back to yourself. And so he says he lets the people to be innocent of worldly knowledge and desire and keeps, got to move this over, the clever ones from making trouble with their wits. So don't seek to be too intelligent, too clever. And certainly don't do it so you can fool other people. Because your job is not to take advantage of others. It's to help other people. And it's funny because we tend to do so many things through desire. If we want it bad enough, we're going to get it. But the truth is that desire is selfish. And selfishness is corruptibility. Okay, so the way can be infused into the nature and put to use without being exhausted. So it actually should be a calming thing for you. It's so deep and subtle, like an abyss that is the origin of all things. It is complete and perfect as a wholeness that can round off sharp edges, resolve confusion, harmonize with the glory, act in unity with the lowliness. It has nothing to do with pride, with selfishness, with the ego, with desire. It's, in fact, all of those things go against the Tao. Tracy, oh my gosh. Hey, Tracy. So I've been talking about Taoism. Can you hear me? You said I just got an email saying you couldn't get in the meeting. But you obviously got in the meeting. Am I right? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
You can always type it in the chat box if for some reason it's not picking up your voice. But I hope you can hear me. And we only got about 10 more minutes, but we can take up all those 10 more minutes. Yay, you can hear me. Okay. Yay, that's fantastic. Okay, so I was talking about Taoism, and most of the second half of the recording is all about Taoism. The first half of the recording, though, is about Oedipus the King, and the link that you have, they have cut off the end of the play. And so I already have the link copied, and I'm going to replace it with the other one. I don't know why. And it's funny because I'm giving you the Project Gutenberg site. It's actually the one that originally I used to use, and it didn't have the ending to it. So I don't know what's going on. So the tragedy wasn't very tragic because we never got to the end of it. It's just insane. So anyway, now we're talking about Taoism though. So we'll spend the next 5 minutes, well, 10 minutes talking about that. Before we do though, Tracy, do you have any questions about anything that we talked about? I just posted the recording from last night. And it talks all about Oedipus the King, well, through about the first 2/3 of it. And then I discussed the essay assignment in the one yesterday. And that's posted, the link is already posted in the discussion recordings in Unit 1. And I'll post, as soon as this one finalizes, it usually takes an hour to do that. And then it takes another, okay. Okay, we'll just come back and I'll talk about a few more chapters. We'll finish talking about Taoism next time though, next Monday, because we're out of time. Or I might just finish it. I don't know. I might record the rest of it like Thursday. And then we'll just start with the Aeneid next week. And because we have 2 nights of that, and then I can talk about the tests too. So, okay, well, you just come back and ask me a question and I'll be able to answer it. Okay, so okay, so then this also, the Tao is so profound and yet invisible. It exists. This is the universe. It is everywhere and anywhere. I do not know whose son it is. It existed before heaven and earth. So this is not, that's why I call it the universe. It's not about a single entity of a single culture or a single God on a single earth. It's about the entire universe and all that works within it. So of course, that's that spiritual side of the universe. But if you're paying attention, you will see it. It's essentially part of what Taoism says. And so nature is at the center of Taoism as well. Nature, you see the balance in nature, the beauty of animals and trees and everything, plus the destruction. Some of the most beautiful animals are also some of the most terrifying, and they're the ones who are predators. And so that's something that's we need to pay attention to as well. And then I'm turning up my own volume just so I can hear her when she comes back. But essentially nature is what we look at as the example. It keeps its balance. In some ways Taoists are probably pretty upset right now, because I'm sure they're environmentalists, but the idea of man putting what's a natural balance out of balance is scary, because man doesn't understand the balance of the universe. And so we play around with stuff that we shouldn't play around with and cause destruction. Okay, so you're going to come. Tracy, are you back? To ask your question?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can now.
Okay. I was going to tell you on the thing I wrote that you told me to go back and read it. I did see a little bit. It was crazy. It was late. I'm sorry. But on the name thing, I knew her name was, I guess it's Jocasta or Jocasta, Jacosta. I knew their name and his name, and I really enjoyed the story. But whenever I guess I went to do when it does the spell check on, on the thing from our school, it must have changed it all. Every bit of it. I was like, oh my gosh. It did it one time and I went back put it, but then I accepted it. So I went back. I was laughing. I'm like, I bet she thinks I'm psycho, but yeah, I seen it.
No, but I wondered why it happened. That honestly, my my phone does that all the time.
The guy's name too, the Theola, however you say his name, it changed his too on there. I was like, okay.
Yeah, but again, they don't speak Greek anymore. Not in it. So they just assume it's all. I mean, even my name is misspelled. So that's That's
but
what
I
they
didn't
say.
catch it. Sometimes I caught it on the other thing, but I didn't catch it on that one. I was like, oh my goodness. Because I was trying to figure out what you meant whenever you told me her name was something in a different thing. And I'm like, huh? And then I went and I read it and I was like, oh, I see what she means. Yeah. But the one that we're doing now, I had a question on it too.
Mhm.
Well, I'm trying to scroll up here and down it. I don't know what I'm doing. You can't scroll up and down it.
Well, I
I'm
can.
sorry.
What,
I
where do you want to go?
think it was chapter 3.
Okay.
I had wrote notes down, but then I'm at work, and of course I left them. Oh yeah, that's it. Okay. When it says, "But not adoring the worthy people will not fall into dispute," is it just like meaning that like if you're not wealthy, then you don't fuss? Is that all it's saying?
No. Okay, so it's a weird thing that it's saying. It's saying don't adore people that you see as worthy.
Oh, like an envy thing. Okay, I
Don't
gotcha.
say, oh, well, Taylor Swift or,
Yeah,
I mean, even presidents and stuff. Don't adore people like they're gods.
yeah, okay.
Don't adore or say that they're better than other people because A, everybody's not going to agree with you, but B, they're not as great as you think they are.
Yeah, I like this guy saying. I went and read a little bit extra on it, and the way it said it kind of got passed down through languages with different places. So
Hmm.
I like that. A lot of what he says reminds me of the Bible, some of it.
Well, I mean, there is a lot to it because it's talking about, I mean, the whole idea of not, don't value hard to get objects. That's greed.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
wanting things that you don't need. And so we were
yeah,
talking, I was actually, that's part of the recording we were doing is that it's, if you don't desire, and this is this chapter 3 is actually very Buddhist in that it's talking about, essentially Buddhism has these assumptions. One is that life is suffering. And two, we suffer more if we want more.
yeah,
So the
yeah,
more we desire what we do not have, the more we suffer. And so the key
exactly.
to it is seeing the world clearly and not desiring more than you need. And
Yeah,
so we make ourselves unhappy. Oh, I need to make more money. I need to have a better job. I need to have a bigger house. I need to have more storage. I need to buy another couch. I need to buy 2 refrigerators. We want a McMansion. I need more land. I want 2 horses,
exactly,
and we get more and more and more stuff and we don't get any, we're no more happier.
exactly.
And
That's
so,
true.
and feeding to these desires is what hurts us because
Yeah,
just because we desire it doesn't mean we're supposed to have it. Instead, that's what the Tao is about. It's this idea that the universe has a path. And when we follow the path the universe gives us, when we're paying attention and following it like almost like a little river follows,
yeah,
we will be happy. And when we buck up against it and insist on swimming upstream because we know what we want, and that's not what the universe is telling us, and we insist we're right, and we insist on our own choice and whatever, we will be
yeah.
unhappy.
That is so true.
And
I
so,
made a comment on one person's. I wasn't trying to cut you off. I'm sorry. What were you
no, it's
saying?
okay. No, go
But
ahead.
I made a comment. I don't really know what I wrote, and I thought to myself, well, maybe I shouldn't have. You know, telling people what I think. Sometimes I'm like, maybe that's part of the whole. Oh, my battery's about to run low. But anyway, I hope they didn't. The way they put it, I don't really know what it was, but it was something about loving. But to me, it meant like if you never loved, then you wouldn't be hurt. But I made the comment though, then you wouldn't have a very fulfilling life or something like that. But that might
See,
not even been
the truth
exactly what
is
that meant.
there's something to it. And I'll look at, I haven't looked at the discussions yet, but I will. It's just I'm grading papers right now in another class. But the truth is if you love, that's exactly what you're supposed to do. What you're
Yeah,
not supposed to do is demand love back. So if you love so that you can get love, you're going about it
yeah.
wrong. It's
Oh
not
yeah,
about
I agree.
yourself or your acclaim or your fame or what you get or your presence. It's never self-centered. And
Need my
so if
computer.
you love to love people, to be kind, to be compassionate, to show other people that they're worthy, it's actually a great way to live because you're not looking for, well, what about me? And for both Taoism and Buddhism, there's an kind of an erasure of who you are. Like the more you think about yourself and what do I get out of this, the more you're
Yeah,
not following either path. And it's more likely to make you unhappy. It's the
Yep.
source of pride and envy and lust and greed and gluttony. It's all this, like the deadly virtue, the deadly sins. Those are all stemming from this,
Oh yeah.
this belief that you're better than other people,
Yeah, I was thinking of that movie also whenever I was reading some of these. I was exactly thinking what you just said, the Seven Deadly Sins. It's a movie. It's, oh, who is Anthony? Is it Anthony Hopkins in it?
Well, is it seven?
Yeah, it's Seven. The name of it's
Well,
Seven.
I
Yeah, I
know
know
it's
Brad Pitt. I think
Brad
it's Brad
Pitt
Pitt.
and
Yeah.
Morgan Freeman is in it.
Yes, and I think his wife's name's Tracy, the one that he cuts her head off and puts in a box. That is
Yeah,
horrible.
yes, that gave me nightmares forever. But the
Yeah.
truth is it's not just about that. It's about um every day in our lives. If I were to just look at everything that happens in my life, and I'm a narcissist, and it's all about, well, who did me good things and who did not do me good things, and
Oh
did
yeah.
this go my way or not my way? Well, that I'm going to be really miserable and grumpy, and I'm going to complain all the time, and no one's going to like me. I'm going to have no friends because I'm self-centered. If
Exactly.
I look at how can I do good every single day, who can I help on a given day? How much can I make class pleasant and intelligent and instructive and worthwhile for all of my students? And how can I make the comments I give on their papers, you know, critical but encouraging, and make it so they want to do better next time and they know how.
Yeah.
Everything should be designed around how do I make other people's lives better? And if I focus on that, I'm going to be happy. And if I
Yeah.
focus, I mean, think about the whole thing with Cinderella. Okay, she had nothing. She was treated like dirt,
Yeah.
whatever, but she was happy
Hmm.
because she was giving and kind, and she loved the little mice and the little everybody else, and she just loved people. And so everybody's like, she's too sweet and too nice. Well, she's actually following Taoism.
Yes.
So it's not about, I'm going to get you back for, you were mean to me, so I'm going to be, the Karens of the world are not Taoists.
Yes.
They're the epitome of the opposite of it. They don't have any balance. They don't balance other people even with themselves. They're the center of the universe, and they will be forever unhappy. So if
Yes.
anything, this is like a how to be happy book, but it
Yeah.
actually I'm glad you actually noticed some connections, because it connects there. I actually know some Christians who are Taoists, and it's just how they live that goes
Yes.
along, because Taoism doesn't have any God system or anything. It's
Yeah.
much more of a
I read that. Yeah.
philosophical way to manage all this stuff. So, but there are a lot of people who find instruction and go, it would be better if I didn't just focus on all the stuff I get or don't get, and
Yeah.
or the way people treat me and whether they're nice to me or bad to me. Who cares? And you don't have to. I mean, think about what was Jesus's teaching. Turn the other cheek. If someone harms you, you turn the other cheek. And it's, don't respond to violence with violence. Respond to violence with kindness.
Yeah.
And in fact, Buddhism would tell you exactly the same thing. It is not your job to make the world a worse place. Your job is to control your actions and make your actions be truthful and kind and compassionate every day.
Yeah.
And
That's
so,
true.
and people think, oh, well, that's just going to make me resentful because other people aren't as nice as I am. No,
Yeah.
because if you're truly doing that to help other people and not for selfish reasons, then you will be happy.
That is true. A lot of times when I'm happiest is when I do things for other people that you don't get anything out of. That's true.
Exactly. Well, and it's the same thing with forgiveness. We forgive people
Yeah.
not because I mean, a lot of them are still angry at us, but
Oh
we
yeah.
forgive them to let go of all of that. They don't owe us anything. We're not going to hold on to anger, and we don't see ourselves as superior. We're going to forgive them and let them go and just hope that they find happiness. And
Yeah.
that's a very peaceful way of existing in the world, but it also means we don't go home and have nightmares about this person and get all angry about that person. It lowers our stress level, if nothing else. But it really does.
Yes.
It gives us something else to, why not focus on the happy stuff and
Yeah.
focus on ways that you can do good things for other people and forget about what people owe you or stuff like that. Holding on to resentment is such a bad thing. It's so unhealthy. So now I don't know what other people are going to think about this, but I am glad you joined me at the end. I'm sorry. How much trouble when did you try to start getting in here?
I started at like 4:05, and then I got busy, and then I come back, and then for about 20 minutes I tried, and I'm like, I'm going to throw this computer. But I said it has to be my computer, and then I'm like, no, I have that because it says download the WebEx, but I already had it downloaded. But then the second time how I got in was I finally copied and pasted it and brought it up here, and for
Mhm.
some reason that worked. And it was saying to sign in with your name now if you're the not instructor, if you're the whatever it is, whatever you are, the person, the host, there we go.
Mhm.
And so I'm like, well, I'm not the host, so I don't do that. So then finally, when I tried to sign in, it let me in. I'm like, are you kidding me? But it said if you're the host, maybe I read it wrong because I'm busy up
Yeah, it
here. And I was
doesn't because it
really,
doesn't say you're the host.
yeah. So I was like,
So,
well, that was confusing. Okay. Bye
so.
bye. Good night.
Well, I'm glad it
Sorry.
worked. Thank
I
you
was
for
talking
coming.
to this guy
Oh,
that's doing the laundry here. I mean, the housekeeper. He's Indian
okay.
and I can't understand nothing he says a lot of times, but I understand him when he says good night.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and what I'll probably do is record another session just to finish the Tao Te Ching and all
Okay.
that we were supposed to read. And then next week, Monday and Tuesday, we'll do um, chapter 1 and chapter 2 of the Aeneid, since that's for next week. And that way we have plenty of time to cover both, this chapter and then cover the other chapter and go through it in particulars. Okay?
All right. Well, thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Thanks for coming. I'm glad you got in.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.